So I introduce Andrew Foss, Gemini scholar. Jyotish Guru is Pandit Sanjay Rath, and he is the creator of the great Vedic software, Sri Jyoti Star, and the excellent book, Yogas of the Planets. So over to you, Andrew.
Thank you very much indeed. So I'm going to take a slightly different tack. But first, let me just remember the Guru. Om Guruve Namah. Om Guruve Namah. Om Guruve Namah. Om Gam Ganapataye Namah. Aim Saraswatyay Namah. So I thought I'd actually talk a little about the Dharma and Karma of Jyotish itself. This is a little different from the discussions we've had so far. So that's good. So what is the purpose of Jyotish or Jyotisha? I would say it's for the upliftment of people and mankind as a whole. This is how it's presented in the classical texts or the ancient texts of Jyotish. It's mentioned, when a question is asked by the student to the rishi who's teaching, and they say, this is an excellent question that will benefit humanity. So this is the main idea. And Jyotish is a Vedanga. It's considered to be the eye of the Veda. So this is the way that the wisdom, the Vedic wisdom sees. It sees. In other words, it knows what to do and when to do it. So that's the responsibility of the Jyotishi, and it's connected with the one of the Shad Darshanas, they translate it as philosophy, but it's not really philosophy. It's a great depth of understanding of the Veda, and in this case, it's Vedanta. So Vedanta is really, we think of Vedanta as being all about the self-realization. So it's clear that Jyotish is also meant to be for self-realization. And the great thing about Jyotish is you start to understand all your own, what you could call nonsense, all your dysfunctions, all your preferences, all these things which are not anything to do with self-realization. They're all the distractions which you make such a fuss of. But really, when we start doing Jyotish, then we should realize that this is all, a distraction. And then it creates compassion. The wonderful thing when you see a chart, like you may have somebody, you meet someone, you find them very irritating. You get a bit irritated, but if you see that chart, suddenly you see this poor person has suffered so much. You see all the suffering that they've been through, and then it's like the irritation goes away and is replaced by compassion. We should feel like this for everybody anyway, but, being human, the Jyotish definitely helps. It's just such a wonderful tool for seeing these things. And what's great about Jyotish is that it's not it's not fatalistic. The Jyotish is supposed to do something to help. It's not just, this poor person and that's it, If the person's willing to do anything to help themselves, we should try to help them. That's one of the main things that we have to train in Jyotish, and it's an endless thing. It's not something you can learn in a weekend or 10 years. It's, throughout life, you're continuously learning. And it aids our search for joy, devotion, and liberation. We should note that if we use Jyotish in a selfish way, like we take a chart of something and we think of some mundane event and we think, oh, wonderful, I'll put some money on this one. Well, that was not the original intention. And the trouble is when we do things like that, okay, we may have extorted something, we may have got something, but we've also paid a price. And generally what happens, I've tended to observe is that people, and we're not talking about just gambling, it's much worse things happen. But all this tantra, all this playing silly games with people's energies, and this has a tendency of shortening life. People who do that, they don't live that long. And it creates lots of obstructions in their life. They have difficulty with all the normal things that we try to do seem to be going badly because too much messing around, you know. So that's not the idea. So the Dharma of Jyotish, traditionally, astrologers had to study under a guru for many years. I remember many years ago, I was somewhere in South India and I met a Jyotishi and I said, what do you require people if they want to learn Jyotish? And they said, well, first they should do pranayama for 10 years, then we'll consider it. So this is the traditional idea, there should be a lot of self-rectification because you have to, in order to get the blessings of the Vidya from a guru, traditionally you had to demonstrate your integrity, your honesty, your sense of service, as well as a capacity to do it. You have to have a competence with the calculations and everything. Of course, these days we have software. My software calculates just about everything, and my guru complains it's making us lazy. But I mean, he also uses it, so what to do? And so a strong spiritual sadhana was always and is today absolutely essential. So why is this? Well, we have to learn and we have to do sadhana. So there's two different things, learning Jyotish as a science and learning this, what sadhana to do. These are two different things. And generally they require two different gurus. This is the AI version of a guru here. But anyway, the Shiksha guru is the one who teaches the science. So when we go for a Jyotish class, the person teaching is a Shiksha guru. And if they're honest, they'll say clearly, I'm not your Diksha guru, I'm just your Shiksha guru. The Diksha guru is the one who gives you the mantra. So that would normally be, we should approach someone who is self-evidently self-realized. They have realized themselves, they've gone beyond all ego issues, and they have siddhi of the mantra. The mantra is fully alive and awake in them. So when they give us the mantra, it awakens in us. And it starts a process of increasing self-realization. Dharma and moksha should start developing in us. Many important things were mentioned earlier in this webinar related to this. So we have to find good Diksha Guru and good Shiksha Guru if we want to study Jyotish. Now, Bhakti. Maharshi Parashara, who wrote the great text which many of us study on Jyotish, he also wrote the fantastic Vishnu Purana. The Vishnu Purana is one of the most important of the Puranas. And it has a little section where he mentions different hells, basically. And surprisingly enough, when I read through this list of hells, he's especially assigned one of them for the Nakshatra Suchikas, which was the name of astrologers in those days, because their main study was in the nakshatras. But then he says that the astrologer will not go to hell if they are a devotee of Sri Krishna. Now, Sri Krishna tells us in the Gita, the Bhagavad Gita, that if you're truly devoted to any deity, you are in effect devoted to him. I mean, I'm mentioning this so we don't have to think that, if we are a deeply devoted person, it's not so much what form we're putting, because whatever the form. So the point is that it's the depth of devotion. It's not the form, it's the depth of devotion that's the key thing. This is what Lord Krishna is teaching. And how do we know we're making some progress with devotion? Well, there should be the joy in our life should increase. A naturally joyful state goes along with a development of devotion. And it develops gradually with sadhana. So wherever we are at, however much the dark clouds or whatever we're experiencing, if we do our sadhana regularly, it will grow and it will grow and it'll remove all the dark clouds. But we should stay out of the negative. There are many places where we're warned in the Vedic literature that, stay away from people who have bad habits. Because if you live with them, for sure you will develop all those bad habits. And try to associate with people who have the good state of consciousness. They're more enlightened type of people. So these are their recommendations. Now, astrologers have a certain karma. You're expected to provide advice, and we should take care how we provide advice. So according to the Manusmriti, one of the ancient law books, if we give bad advice, in other words, if we tell somebody something and it turns out to be a mistake, then we are getting 3 times the karma that the person who actually makes the mistake gets. So we should think very carefully when we're giving advice. And I would say, personally, the especially sensitive areas are things like relationships, relocation, or jobs, In other words, we shouldn't destroy something good that the person has because we looked at the chart and we came to some funny conclusion. I remember I was once working with this lady, and she'd always been alone. She'd never found anybody, and she was pretty unhappy. It wasn't much fun working with her. But somehow whatever happened, she found this guy, and they decided to get married. But then they made the mistake. They decided they were going to check with some astrologer because they were very devoted to their guru, and the guru had an astrologer. So they went to the astrologer. Astrologer looked at the charts and said, this isn't a good idea. So they broke up. A couple of weeks later, she got a letter from the astrologer saying they thought about it a bit more, and actually it was perfectly fine. But then the boy wasn't interested anymore. It was like it had been so painful that they didn't want to look at it again. So I just always remember this incident. One should be extremely careful, So I'm just saying to those astrologers who might be listening, they all know this, but I'm just repeating it. So the main thing, I think, people who are, and those who aren't astrologers, you go to an astrologer for a reading, you should understand that whatever the person says, it should resonate with you. If it doesn't resonate with you on some level, don't do it, Because an astrologer can't tell you anything about yourself that you don't already know on some level. Maybe it's a subconscious kind of level, but even subconscious levels resonate with us. So if somebody says something to us and something inside of us says, yes, it's good. And if we don't get that, don't do it. The astrologer might be having a bad day or something, So this is just a small advice. So the last thing I wanted to mention is this wonderful teaching from the Vedic literature. It's about how we should speak. It says, Satyam bruyat, priyam bruyat, na bruyat satyam apriyam, priyam anritam na bruyat, esha dharma sanatana. So it's very simple. Satyam bruyat, speak the truth, priyam bruyat, but speak the sweet truth. Don't nabruyat satyam apriyam. Don't say things which, even if we think they're true, are not sweet. In other words, don't damage other people, by saying some harsh thing. You hear people saying harsh things, and you say, why did you say that? And they say, it's true. So what? It wasn't kind. You shouldn't have said it. That's what the sage is saying here. And also saying priyam, anritamna bruyat, which means don't say things just because you want to please somebody, knowing they're not true, you see. He said, don't say things that are untrue just for the sake of being sweet. Because this is also a failing that, sometimes we fall into. So we have to find some ways of being truthful, maybe diplomatic, but it should be diplomatic in the sense that it's kind. We say things that are kind, diplomatic. This is the Sanatana Dharma. Esha Dharma Sanatana. So those who have an interest in the Sanatana Dharma, this is the definition from the literature. I wish everyone would know this definition. So that's my small comment, and we've finished our webinar. And if there are any questions, all of the four of us can address them.
So thank you, Andrew. That was extremely profound and beautiful.
Thank you.
So that was really good. I think all of us astrologers can learn from it that we have to also have the dharma of our subject, and that is what was taught right at the beginning of, in Varaha Mahira, he talks about what the dharma should be done. So